I am pretty sure that this is every parent's and camper's worst nightmare, to wake up in the morning and realise that your kid is missing from the campsite. Well, this story is a new nightmare unlocked because this family went camping less than an hour from their home, only to find out that when they woke up in their tent, that their little baby girl was missing. You might remember that story of a little girl. She was 4 years old. Her name was Cleo Smith. She went missing from a campsite in Western Australia called blowholes. For a whole 18 days in 2021, the whole of Australia felt like that we held our breath wondering what had happened to her. And today I'm going to finally talk about this story and how it affected us and our connection to this story. So this video isn't about just retelling the story because you've already seen all that on your news. I want to unpack this story and how it's affected so many families, travelers, and affected the way that you think about camping in tents. As much as we love traveling Australia, it's stories like these ones that remind us of how vulnerable we are, especially when you're traveling and camping with kids. For us in particular, we just cannot believe how lucky we are that it wasn't us, because we camped in this exact spot about 1 to 10 days before this actually happened, and we weren't far from this campsite when this all unraveled, and it really did affect us. Wait, not in the way that it was our child, but the fact that it just changed the way that we thought. At that time, we almost had Tilly and Tex were going to sleep in swags. Well, that went out the window after this happened. I just feel so blessed that it wasn't us, but you know, this story has an okay ending. On September 16th, 2021, Cleo went to bed with her mum and her stepdad in a tent at the campsite called the Blowholes. It's in Point Quabba near Carnarvon, Western Australia. But by morning, she was gone, completely vanished. The zip tent was open, her sleeping bag gone, and absolutely no trace of her. And the family's worst nightmare had just begun. The search was absolutely enormous. You had police, volunteers, drones, helicopters, divers. They were trying to find her, thinking that maybe she went over the cliff because there's big cliff faces there. There's an aquarium which we snorkeled in, which is beautiful, but all these places. I remember that there was a white ute that they were tracking, that they couldn't work out where that ute came from, so that went on. And you know, as travelers, we've seen many of those missing signs, particularly like a couple of hikers that really did affect us, but being a little kid stolen out of the tent, like that's just next level. I just feel like it hit differently because you start to think, like, how safe are we really camping out in the bush with no one else around? And managing the children, because the girls were really invested in it, obviously, because this little girl that was a similar age to them had just gone missing at the campsite that we were just at, and we didn't want to scare them, but at the same time we wanted to, you know, to make sure they're aware that there are bad people out there. Long story short, after 18 agonizing days, imagine what the family went through. They went on 60 Minutes, and that really like caused me to wonder, like, is there something suspicious here? But they ended up finding her at this dingy little house, locked in a room with all these toys. It was so creepy. And that area, I'll just put some photos up to give you a bit of an idea, and I just felt so bad for her. Fortunately, from what they've reported, nothing bad happened to her. I feel like the whole country cheered, and I remember seeing her being held by that police officer. The feeling he must have felt, because they would have just been searching everywhere for him. Anyway, the man was arrested and he's been up for trial. I don't really know what happened, but he's in jail now. For the fact and for that story of hope and thinking that was safely returned back to her family was really not what a lot of us were expecting. But here's why, as a mum that travels, why it struck such like a really strong chord with me, and probably plenty of other mums that were traveling at the time as well. It's because it was a travel story and it was a camping story. It was like a family going out and doing what they should be doing, you know, exploring and spending time together. I guess that's what really hit home was, you know, what you think safe is. Thinking that your child is in a tent with you, you would think that is safe, let alone like the week that it happened. Our kids were running around the campground at the playground. Like, we weren't watching them thinking that that is safe. But now come to think of it, like, what if that predator was there at the campground? He could have easily snatched any kid from anywhere. Like, because this isn't just a crime story. It's a story about camping and how often are we off-grid in the middle of nowhere in the bush, surrounded by strangers who we become friends with. To think that nothing like a little simple unzip or an open of the door and your child could be just gone. And I guess this story, it still shakes me now. And I know that they're all off happy and they got a nice payout from 60 Minutes and they're actually caravanning and traveling themselves, which is so interesting that they've just got back on the horse and they're not going to let it affect them, which I think is fantastic. I probably think they sleep with one eye open though, or maybe make sure that they lock the door and lock the window where she is. I guess it's a bit of a wake-up call, but also at the same time, not to be frightened. Like, you still need to live your life, because we definitely do not want to live in fear while we're out there. I know when we first traveled, I was really scared. And then after a while, you get less and less scared. And you come to think of it, the first time we went to this campground where this happened, I was like, I'm not camping there, because there's all these shanty kind of sheds. And I'm like, this is really creepy. And by the second year that we went there, I'm like, yeah, let's go. I don't care. We'll be fine. And then that happens. But I guess this crime story, which it is we've got to be more aware but also not live in fear. Maybe talk to your kids about safety. I'm always explaining it to them, trying not to get Tilly or Tex scared. But I talk to her about like all the East Coast women that have gone missing and how easily that would be for someone just to come through Shute Harbour Road here or through any of these towns and just grab someone. Like, I always make sure that I'm talking to her about these things without getting her scared. She's not that scared, but I would never want her to be walking on her own. And I guess if you're out with each other and you're camping with each other, look after each other and check in on the campsites. Keep an eye on your kids, because, I mean, there's obviously dingoes and that kind of thing out there as well, not just predators like this. Honestly, the thing that this story, it still gives me chills. And to think that it could have just been anyone, it could have been us, it could have been our friends, but it happened to someone. Just because we don't know them, it still happened to them. And whilst traveling and camping is so that we can have freedom, the kids can have freedom, they can have new experiences, we still have to remind them about the safety. And it's stories like Cleo's, that safety still has to come first. Anyway, I'm so glad I finally shared this story. I know that a lot of you already know about this, but it's something that really deeply did affect me. And I would love to share more stories like this, because there's plenty of them that I've got in the back of my mind. But if you have one that you want to share, feel free to DM me or send me an email, or if you just want to share it and tag me, I would love to hear stories, because we always hear about, oh, this place is so beautiful, but what about like the dark stories that happen? I'm hoping to do more stories like this, so if this did connect with you or if you enjoyed this, please hit subscribe and drop a comment down below if you had heard of these stories or if you had camped at Quabba Blowholes before. And thank you so much for meeting me here in this little corner of the internet. If you want to support my content, you can join my membership, which has unreleased videos in there, a bit more behind the scenes, and it's a great way that you can help support my content so that I can keep making videos like this. At the moment, it's $5.99, so you can think of it as donating a cup of coffee a month. Thanks so much. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.